Chapter 11: Cigarettes and Alcohol. Cigarettes and alcohol. It has a certain festive ring, don't you think? Cigarettes and alcohol, parties and fun, dancing and music, Christmas and New Year, cirrhosis and lung cancer. There he goes again, typical Neil Casey, spoiling the fun. Why does he always have to pour cold water on everything? What's wrong with him? Doesn't he know the rest of us have real jobs with real pressures? Doesn't he know that most people don't spend their lives writing books, recording CDs, and lecturing smokers? Who can blame people for letting their hair down at times? After all, you could get hit by a bus tomorrow. True, you could get hit by a bus today for that matter. I met a man at an earlier nicotine trick workshop who was immensely proud of the fact that he was a heavy drinker and heavy smoker, and even more proud of the fact that he'd never made any attempt to cut down on either booze or fags. He was only 60, but already he was starting to look like he'd been hit by a bus. Still, whatever makes people happy, right? But that's the point. He wasn't happy. The fear was like red fire behind his eyes. But aren't cigarettes and alcohol supposed to drive away fear? Doesn't life teach us to see these things either as a reward or as a pick-me-up? The relaxing cigarette after sex, the large brandy after a sudden shock, the champagne breakfast, the celebratory cigar. Is it any wonder that the link between smoking and drinking is so strong? There's another thing that smoking and drinking have in common, and that's the strange fact that we unknowingly refer to each of these activities in a very vague way. How many times have you heard someone who's about to have a drink say, "I'm just going to ingest several milliliters of alcohol for an optimal 2-hour period. This will cause my fine motor coordination to be impaired, and I'll feel less inhibited socially. This will enable me to engage in conversations with people in whose company I normally feel insecure. Unfortunately, there will also be the possibility of me becoming either embarrassingly flirtatious or unnecessarily argumentative, although I feel this risk is justified under the circumstances." Huh? You wouldn't hear it from doctors, surgeons, or even subscribers to Crossword Monthly. People say things like, "I'm just going for a drink," or maybe they don't even mention drinking at all. Maybe they just say, "I'm going out for a couple of hours." The same applies with smoking. Have you ever noticed the almost unspoken code that passes between smokers who are planning a fag break? It's all little nods and winks and meaningful glances at the door. Have you ever said to another smoker, "I've got a great idea. Why don't we inhale a tiny amount of nicotine into our lungs? This will make the tension from the previous cigarette we smoked go away slightly, although obviously it will cause this tension to start building all over again, which I suppose makes it a complete waste of time." No. Instead, you say, "Cigarette?" By putting a friendly or offhand slant on activities like drinking and smoking, we allow ourselves to take a different view of them. We allow ourselves to see them as just a bit of fun, a way of letting go. In case you believe I'm some kind of health freak since I discovered the nicotine trick, let me tell you that last night I ate an enormous amount of Chinese food from a questionable local takeaway. I then drank several pints of lager, sat in front of the television until midnight, and thoroughly enjoyed myself doing it. I'm not anti-drinking, and believe it or not, I'm not even anti-smoking. I'm anti-bullshit, anti-deception, anti-delusion. I was initially dubious as to whether I should even write this section. I wanted this book to provide nothing more than the necessary information on the phobia known as the nicotine trick, but based on what I've heard from recent workshops, it was obvious that this chapter needed to be here for one reason. Alcohol seems to ruin so many attempts to stop smoking. To be more precise, millions of people stop smoking and then start again when they have a drink. Alcohol hasn't really ruined anything, but it's been an unwitting accessory. You need to know why alcohol is involved in so many failed attempts, and you need to know why it won't happen this time. Firstly, remember that most attempts to stop smoking are based on a hopelessly ineffective combination of willpower and other people's scare tactics. In other words, the smoker is stopping, not because his or her subconscious mind has let go of the false beliefs that drive smoking, but because they think they shouldn't smoke. This is an absolute disaster, because all it takes is one weak moment when the risks of smoking don't seem so bad, and the smoker is smoking again. And what's the single biggest time when we're likely to ignore risks? When we've had a drink. When we're drunk, we're less concerned about danger, which is why so many fights, divorces, and airborne cars happen as a result of drinking alcohol. This means that if you force yourself to stop smoking because of the health risks, you'll be tempted to have a smoke when you drink because at some point you won't care about the danger of lighting up again. The other thing is, alcohol acts as a strong local anesthetic. It numbs the tongue and throat. This means that any cigarettes you've smoked when you've been drinking alcohol have physically been slightly less irritating, so your subconscious mind remembers these cigarettes as being less unpleasant than others. But this time, you're not going to stop smoking and then simply hope for the best. You're going to make your subconscious mind aware of the reality of smoking in such a way that it will let go of smoking for you. This means that even if you get drunk after you've stopped smoking, the underlying phobia still won't be there, and without that phobia, your subconscious mind won't tell you to smoke. Have you ever been tempted to pour petrol over yourself and set light to it just because you were drunk? Of course not. This impulse has never occurred to you, whether you've been drunk or sober. Even when you're drunk, you can only want to smoke if the hidden connections are being made that tell you to smoke. All the way through this book, I've been getting you to think of smoking alternately as a one-sided affair and a phobia. But surely it can't be both. Isn't this a contradiction? No, because many one-sided affairs are effectively phobias. They're relationships based on fear, usually the fear of being alone or the fear of the consequences of ending the affair. In either case, if you remove the source of the fear, you remove the fear itself. Smokers aren't scared of putting on weight. Smokers aren't scared of losing their confidence. Smokers aren't scared of losing their concentration. Smokers don't have a chronic physical addiction to nicotine, or an oral fixation, or addictive personalities, or self-destructive DNA, or horns in the middle of their heads, or anything other than a phobia of the delayed response to nicotine, a phobia caused by two easily removed misunderstandings in their subconscious minds. Smokers are scared because their subconscious minds mistake the delayed reaction to nicotine for fear, and because the time delay makes them fail to see this sensation as the direct result of smoking. The rest of it is bullshit, white noise, a collection of red herrings. Keep your eyes on the phobia itself. Don't distract yourself with the trivia. When the phobia goes, all the other stuff will disappear by itself. It's all a lot simpler now you know that smoking is a phobia rather than an addiction or a habit, because you can now start to concentrate your attention on the specific source of the fear rather than on the side issues that just confuse things. Our woman with the phobia of dogs doesn't panic at the sight of a cat. She doesn't panic at the sight of a cow or a horse or a giraffe. Her subconscious mind reacts specifically to dogs because it thinks that dogs are a danger to her based on her childhood experience. In other words, there is a specific, understandable explanation for her phobia. Exactly the same applies with smoking. Your subconscious mind reacts to the physical tension caused by nicotine because it thinks it represents a danger to you. By telling you to smoke, it's really trying to remove fear. But once you've made your subconscious mind see that the physical tension caused by nicotine is simply a chemical sensation that feels like fear, a panic response will no longer make sense and your subconscious mind will discard smoking without any willpower or hassle. By the way, this is established science, not some way-out theory. It's precisely how clinical psychologists treat people who have other phobias. There are two main methods based on the same principle. The first method is to hypnotize the sufferer and break the link between the source of fear and the fear itself. The second method is to gradually expose the sufferer to the source of the fear and let the subconscious mind see that the threat is false, at which point it will let go of the phobia by itself. Either way, the end result is the same. The subconscious mind no longer reacts in the same way to a particular situation or sensation because it no longer sees it as a threat. We're going to use a variation of the second method. In the final chapter, I'll show you how to gently remove the fear response that drives your smoking. You're going to make your subconscious mind understand the delayed physical tension caused by smoking for what it really is, a painless, chemically induced sensation that is directly caused by smoking a cigarette. When it sees the reality of this situation, it will stop telling you to smoke. You might find it hard to believe that your mind can possibly let go of such an ingrained reaction as smoking this easily, but it can and it will. Your subconscious mind will let go of even the most terrifying fear in a single moment of realization, provided it is given sufficient proof that the threat is no longer real. But don't take my word for this. Let me prove it to you beyond all doubt. If you walked into the room of a country mansion and suddenly saw a huge bear with its mouth open and its teeth bared towards you, you'd probably recoil with fear. But as soon as you realized that the bear was just a stuffed exhibit, it would immediately cease to frighten you, and your subconscious mind would relax and stop telling you to run away. It wouldn't take willpower, it wouldn't take hypnotism, it wouldn't take a 900-page book or a video, or acupuncture, or thousands of pounds of therapy at a Harley Street clinic. All it would take would be the split second in which the reality of the situation is effortlessly transferred to your subconscious mind. Make sure you understand that it really would happen this quickly, and that it would take absolutely no effort. How many times in your life have you laughed at something that absolutely terrified you just a few seconds earlier? How much effort did it take to go from being frightened to being amused? How much willpower did it take? None. All it took was knowledge. Let me repeat that. All it took was knowledge. Fear and threat are things most people don't spend much time thinking about because they're handled automatically by their subconscious minds. Even so, it's worth taking a moment to understand the difference between threat and fear. One is the cause and the other is the effect. Do you see people running around screaming in fear at zoos because of all the dangerous wild animals in there? No, because even the most dangerous wild animals represent no threat while they're behind bars. But if a 12-foot tiger were to escape from its compound, everyone would panic, including you. Now understand this. That tiger would be exactly the same animal into whose razor-toothed face you were cheerfully pointing your Polaroid camera 10 seconds earlier. But suddenly, you're more terrified than the 2-year-old girl sitting in her pram nearby. But if the tiger is so dangerous, why weren't you scared before it escaped? Because your subconscious mind has no reason to be frightened of a tiger while it represents no threat, so it doesn't bother to react. Why should it? When you stop smoking this time, the physical tension caused by smoking will no longer be perceived by your subconscious mind as a threat, and it therefore won't see any need to keep triggering a panic response, you smoking a fag, because a panic response will no longer make sense to it. Why should it? This is why you won't need willpower, because you're not going to consciously stop smoking. You're simply going to give your subconscious mind the correct perception of what cigarettes really do and let it stop smoking for you. Here's a fascinating thing that I've noticed while doing nicotine trick workshops. If I ask a smoker why they smoke, they give the usual variety of answers. They enjoy it, they're addicted to nicotine, it's a habit, and so on. But one thing I've noticed is that not one smoker has ever told me they enjoy smoking while they were physically smoking a cigarette. They've only ever claimed to enjoy smoking while they've not actually been smoking. Do you know what this means? It means that, in between cigarettes, the smoker's mind blanks out the real reason for smoking a cigarette. It tries to pretend that the phobia doesn't exist. This is a natural protection mechanism and, interestingly, it's a characteristic of many other phobias. They only kick in when the individual detects a possible threat and are then put aside as though they didn't exist. With smoking, smokers claim to enjoy smoking because they don't even consciously know they have a phobia, so they assume that smoking must somehow be pleasurable. In the final chapter of this book, we're finally going to allow your subconscious mind to face up to this phobia and defeat it. We're going to make sure your subconscious mind sees each cigarette as an anticlimax,